Hey there, Star Wars fans. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling one of the most fascinating mysteries in the galaxy far, far away. A question that's been bugging fans for decades. Think about it. Order 66 happens, nearly every Jedi is wiped out, and Emperor Palpatine has achieved his ultimate goal. But there's one massive loose end. Arguably the most powerful Jedi who ever lived is still out there somewhere. Yoda. The 900-year-old Grand Master who trained Jedi for 8 centuries managed to escape the Purge. So here's what doesn't make sense. Why didn't Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer and Jedi hunter extraordinaire, spend the next 19 years turning the galaxy upside down looking for him? We know Vader was obsessed with hunting down Jedi survivors. He personally killed dozens of them. Yet somehow, the biggest prize of all seemed to slip through the cracks. Was it strategic? Was it personal? Or was there something deeper at play here? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the Dark Lord of the Sith left the greatest Jedi Master alone, and why that decision reveals more about both characters than you might expect. But before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got tons more Star Wars content coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Let's start with the most practical reason. Vader and Palpatine were simply too busy building an empire to chase ghosts in the Outer Rim. When Order 66 executed, it wasn't just about killing Jedi, it was about fundamentally reshaping galactic civilization. Within hours, the Republic became the Empire, and suddenly, Palpatine and Vader had to consolidate control over thousands of star systems, each with their own governments, militaries, and potential resistance movements. The Canon comics, particularly the Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith series, show us exactly what Vader was doing in those crucial early years. He wasn't sitting around planning elaborate hunts for specific Jedi. Instead, he was putting down rebellions, hunting Jedi survivors who were actively causing problems, and most importantly, learning how to be Sith. Remember, Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar. The person in that suit was essentially starting from scratch, learning to use his new mechanical body, adapting to his changed relationship with the Force, and figuring out his role in this new galactic order. Palpatine kept him busy with mission after mission, each one designed to cement his transformation into Darth Vader. Think about it from a resource management perspective. The Empire's intelligence apparatus was still being built. They were transitioning from Republic intelligence to Imperial intelligence, recruiting new agents, establishing new networks. Even if they wanted to find Yoda, they were starting with limited resources and unlimited responsibilities. Plus, here's something most fans don't consider. They didn't even know Yoda was alive for sure. The last confirmed sighting of him was during his lightsaber duel with Palpatine in the Senate chamber. After that, he vanished completely. For all the Empire knew, Yoda could have died during Order 66 like most other Jedi Masters. Without concrete intelligence suggesting he was alive and actively opposing the Empire, why waste precious resources on what might be a wild goose chase? The Empire had immediate, tangible threats to deal with. Jedi survivors who were gathering others, organizing resistance cells, or trying to restart the Jedi Order. These were clear and present dangers that required immediate attention. A potentially dead 900-year-old Jedi hiding somewhere in the unknown regions? That could wait. And let's be honest about Imperial priorities. Palpatine was more concerned with building superweapons, crushing rebellions, and establishing his rule than settling personal scores with individual Jedi, no matter how powerful they once were. But here's where things get really interesting, and where we need to talk about one of the most brilliant strategic moves in Star Wars history. Yoda didn't just hide. He hid in plain sight of the dark side itself. Dagobah wasn't chosen randomly. This swamp world contained something incredibly rare. A dark side vergence, specifically what's known as the Cave of Evil. Now, you might be thinking, wait, wouldn't hiding next to dark side energy make Yoda easier to find? But that's exactly why it was genius. The way the Force works, light and dark energies can cancel each other out when they're in perfect balance. Yoda, one of the most powerful light side users in galactic history, positioned himself right next to this dark side nexus. His massive light side presence essentially neutralized the cave's energy, and vice versa. The result? A Force null zone that made it impossible for anyone, even Palpatine, to sense his presence. Recent Star Wars content has confirmed that Yoda's presence balanced the dark side cave's influence, creating a kind of Force dampening effect that masked his signature completely. It's like hiding a flashlight's beam by pointing it directly at another flashlight. The two cancel each other out, but this hiding technique came with a cost. Yoda had to stay relatively close to the cave to maintain this balance. He couldn't travel freely or involve himself in galactic affairs without risking detection. He was essentially self-imprisoned on Dagobah, trading his freedom for perfect concealment. Think about how sophisticated this strategy was. Yoda knew that Palpatine possessed similar far-seeing abilities. He knew the Emperor would be looking for him using the Force. So instead of trying to hide his light side presence, which would be nearly impossible for someone of his power level, he found a way to mask it entirely. The dark side cave also served another purpose. It was a testing ground. When Luke arrives on Dagobah, Yoda immediately sends him to the cave. This wasn't random. Yoda had been using that cave for nearly 2 decades to understand the dark side, to prepare for the possibility that he might need to face it again, and to develop training methods for future Jedi. From an Imperial intelligence perspective, even if they had detected some kind of Force anomaly on Dagobah, it would have registered as dark side energy, the last thing they'd associate with Yoda. It was the perfect double blind. Hide your light side presence behind dark side energy, making yourself invisible to both light and dark side detection methods. Palpatine, despite having virtually the same far-seeing abilities as Yoda, couldn't detect him, primarily because Yoda achieved such complete control that he could disappear entirely in the Force. This wasn't just hiding. This was a masterclass in Force manipulation that took decades to perfect. Now, let's talk about the psychological aspects of this situation, because both Palpatine and Vader had very personal reasons for not actively hunting Yoda, and these reasons reveal a lot about their characters. For Palpatine, there's a twisted logic at play here. Some sources suggest that Palpatine actually wanted Yoda to witness the galaxy being ruled by the Sith. Think about this from the Emperor's perspective. He'd spent his entire life plotting the downfall of the Jedi Order. What greater victory could there be than having the greatest Jedi Master alive to see his complete and total success? Palpatine was always about psychological warfare. He didn't just want to defeat his enemies, he wanted to crush their spirits, to prove that their entire worldview was wrong. Having Yoda alive somewhere, helpless to stop the Empire's rise, knowing that everything he'd spent 800 years building was destroyed, that was a more satisfying victory than simply killing him. There's also the practical consideration that actively hunting Yoda might actually make him more dangerous. As long as he was in hiding, he wasn't training new Jedi, organizing resistance, or actively opposing the Empire. But if Palpatine sent Star Destroyers to every swamp world in the galaxy looking for him, that might drive Yoda to take more desperate actions. For Vader, the psychology is completely different, and it ties into one of the most fascinating aspects of his character transformation. Vader seems far more obsessed with Obi-Wan Kenobi than with Yoda, constantly referencing Obi-Wan's training methods and what he perceives as Obi-Wan's failures. This makes perfect sense when you consider Vader's emotional journey. Obi-Wan was his master, his brother, the person who left him burning on Mustafar. That's deeply personal. But Yoda? Yoda was a distant figure, a Grand Master who barely interacted with Anakin during his training years. There wasn't the same personal connection, the same burning need for revenge. Plus, from Vader's perspective, he'd already had his confrontation with Yoda vicariously through Palpatine. His master had fought the Grand Master and won. In Vader's mind, that chapter might already be closed. Yoda had been defeated, the Jedi Order was destroyed, and that was sufficient. But there's something deeper here too. Yoda represented the old Jedi ways that Vader now rejected. Hunting him down would mean acknowledging that those ways still mattered, that they were still a threat worth pursuing. By ignoring Yoda, Vader was essentially saying that the Jedi philosophy was so thoroughly defeated, it wasn't even worth finishing off its greatest practitioner. There's also the question of confidence versus fear. Both Vader and Palpatine were supremely confident in their victory. The Empire was growing stronger every day, the Jedi were extinct, and galactic civilization was reshaping itself around Sith principles. From their perspective, what could one old hermit possibly do to threaten all of that? Of course, this overconfidence would ultimately be their downfall, but that's a lesson for another day. Here's the most fascinating part of this whole situation. Vader and Palpatine's decision to leave Yoda alone was both strategically sound and ultimately catastrophic for the Empire. In the short term, they were absolutely right. Yoda posed no immediate threat. He wasn't organizing rebellions, training new Jedi, or actively opposing Imperial rule. From a resource allocation standpoint, focusing on immediate threats while leaving a hermit on a swamp world alone made perfect sense. But in the long term, this decision handed the rebellion its greatest victory. Because when Luke Skywalker needed training, when the Force needed to awaken a new generation of Jedi, Yoda was there. Not just alive, but prepared. He'd spent 2 decades in exile, not just hiding, but training, meditating, and preparing for exactly this moment. The dark side cave that had hidden him so perfectly also became the perfect training ground for Luke. Yoda had spent 19 years studying the balance between light and dark, understanding both sides of the Force in ways that few Jedi ever had. This made him uniquely qualified to train someone who would face the ultimate test, redeeming Darth Vader himself. Think about the cascade of events. No hunt for Yoda means Yoda survives. Yoda's survival means Luke gets proper Jedi training. Luke's training means he's strong enough to face Vader and eventually turn him back to the light. Vader's redemption means Palpatine's death and the Empire's downfall. From a storytelling perspective, this creates one of the most beautiful ironies in the Star Wars saga. The Empire's greatest strategic decision, focusing on immediate threats while ignoring a seemingly harmless hermit, directly caused their ultimate destruction. Palpatine, the master planner who thought 50 moves ahead, made a single oversight that unraveled everything he'd built. And perhaps most poetically, it was Yoda's greatest strength as a Jedi, patience, that ultimately defeated the Sith's greatest weakness, arrogance. While Vader and Palpatine were focused on immediate power and control, Yoda was playing a game that spanned decades, preparing for a future they couldn't even imagine. So there you have it, folks. Vader never hunted Yoda because he didn't need to, couldn't find him, and didn't think it was worth the effort. But in making that calculation, he and his master made the single greatest strategic error in galactic history. What do you think? Was leaving Yoda alone the Empire's biggest mistake, or was it actually the logical choice given what they knew at the time? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing your theories. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to check out our video on why Palpatine never sensed Vader's conflict before Return of the Jedi. It's another fascinating look at the psychology of the Sith. And don't forget to subscribe for more Star Wars content every week. Until next time, may the Force be with you. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you choose to ignore.